gratitude and veneration to the Buddha, with gratitude for giving us this Dhamma to make our life peaceful, meaningful, and happy. With gratitude, let us pay homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Dear friends in the Dhamma, it is a great pleasure for me to come here to this Mangala Vihara and to this series of Dhamma Talks today to meet all of you. And first of all, I'm really grateful for this invitation, and I'm especially grateful to our sister Lily Chan for making this invitation. And when I was visiting last time Singapore, she was trying to hold me, looking for me, and then she managed to find me through Bodhiraja Buddhist Society. I'm sorry. Can you bring that? Yeah. Can you hear me now? A little bit, okay. Again, I'm very grateful for this invitation, and thank you for inviting me. And this is also a good opportunity for me to personally pay my tribute to our late teacher, our late principal, Bhante Dr. Jnana Rama. Because when I was in Singapore many years ago, he also invited me to come and teach in Pali and Buddhist college, so I taught maybe for about 2 semesters here. And he was always very kind and very compassionate towards monks like us, and he always encouraged me to study and then commit to the monks' mission. So he was such a great teacher, such a great inspiration for all of us. So when I visited Singapore last December, I made sure to visit him. So we had a nice meeting in the evening. And then when I informed him that I completed my all studies, he was so glad. He personally was so
I think you have to
glad.
use this one a bit soft. Behind cannot hear.
Can I use the like this? Okay. Okay, another one. So that was really a nice meeting. It's a memorable meeting for me. He was so happy that I completed the studies. So when I come to Singapore this time, it's like a feeling of lack that we don't have such a prominent and a senior teacher. But I think I would like to spend a minute of silence in tribute to Bhante, because he has brought so much change to the face of Buddhism in Singapore by encouraging people to learn more, learn the Dhamma particularly, and be educated in the Dhamma. So let us take a minute. We have 1 minute of silence in tribute to Bhante, our principal, Bhante Dr. Jnana Rama, with gratitude, wishing him well-being and a smooth journey towards the enlightenment. Thank you. Okay, our topic today is Buddhist guidelines to manage negative emotions. When we hear the topic negative emotions, it reminds us it's about our mental life. Actually, when you start to study Buddhism, one thing you will realize is that Buddhism is all about learning how our mind operates, and then how we can change the normal way of working of the mind to free ourselves. So in generally, what Buddhism is doing us to encouraging us to know the mind, which means to know the general way our mind works, how it attached to things, how it creates conflicts with things. So general way of working the mind, to know the mind. And once you know the mind, you can actually start shaping the mind, and purposefully try to find the ways that bring unhappiness to us, and start to change it. And as a result of keep shaping the mind, and at the end we can free the mind from all ignorance and defilements. So that's, in summary, that will be the Buddhism. Like to know the mind, to shape the mind, to free the mind. So much analysis about human mind. And not only the normal way our human mind works, there's so much emphasis on that, but there's also equal emphasis on potentials of our mind, hidden potentials of our mind. What are the skills that we can grow? We have that capacity, but not necessarily developed to the fullest extent. So recognizing the potentials and capacities and growing them. And that the whole journey, Buddhist practice about training the mind. We call three sikha, the triple training. It's about training the mind. So when it comes to managing negative emotions, we have a lot of guidelines and a lot of wisdom that we can learn from the Buddha. He teaches from the Buddha to understand how our mind works, and particularly how the negative emotions works in our mind. So that is very common to us. But I think we also need to understand that why we have to study, why we have to know about negative emotions, because the ultimate quality of our life depends on the way we can manage our emotions. Of course, our relationships and our surrounding, our belongings, they are important part of the quality of our life, but they themselves cannot determine how happy we are or what kind of quality life we are living. Your belongings, your possessions, your career, and your relationship, your family, they are very important supporting factors. But the key factor that will decide the quality of your life, what kind of life I'm living, the key factor is actually how we handle our inner world. If you do not know how to handle our inner world, and those things will be around you, you may be living in the best house, you may be having a wonderful career, but if you do not know how to handle your inner world, and all these things become a source of suffering to us. Our relationships become a source of suffering, not source of happiness. And anything that belongs to us become a source of conflict and suffering. So it's really important to learn how to work with our inner world. That's an interesting sutta. Sutta is a discourse of the Buddha, the discourse given by the Buddha. It's called Hattaka Sutta. And this is found in the connected discourse of Samyutta Nikaya. And this, according to this sutta, one day actually, during the winter period in northern India, where the Buddha lived, they had winters, they have seasons. This incident happened right in the middle of the winter. It looks like somewhere in February. And one day, so Buddha was traveling to different villages, different places, so he had to rest under a tree. So he spent that night under that tree. The next morning, there was a person called Hattaka. That is why this sutta was named as Hattaka. That is his name, Hattaka. And actually, according to the sutta, he was going for his morning walk. I was really surprised to read this sutta because it looks like even in 6th century BC, people had habit of jogging. Yeah, it's called Mangala Vihara, like moving the knees, walking with the knees. So he was going in on his morning walk, and he saw a monk was sitting under a tree. So he went close to that place and realized that that area was not a comfortable area. He said that, he asked from the Buddha, the monk, did you have a good sleep last night? Because this is the middle of the winter. Nobody can stay outside. And did you had a good sleep last night? What do you think the answer of the Buddha? Definitely yes, right? But what the Buddha said that, Hattaka, the Brahmin, I am one of the persons in the world who can sleep the best way. Who can sleep I am one of the peoples in the world who can sleep well. So that's how Buddha said that. And then he asked, this is the time for snowfall. And this ground that you slept on is not smooth. And moreover, the leaves that you spread under this floor is not thick, it's very thin. How come? And your robe is also not that thick. And also, this we also get a strong wind from the North Pole. And how can somebody sleep under these conditions? Because all these external conditions are not conducive for a good sleep. Not smooth space, not a smooth surface. The weather is not good. How someone can sleep nicely? Then Buddha asked a counter question. If you think that these external conditions are important, are the key for to have a good sleep, can you answer this? Imagine that the person has a nice bed. And actually Buddha explains nicely. So velvet blanket. On the top of that you have 2 pillows in the both side. The oil lamp is dimly lighting in 4 sides. And you have a white canopy on the top of your bed. I can imagine the kind of luxurious life that people had those days. Not only the rich ones. He explains, of course, Buddha was a prince. He knew the luxurious life, the high-end life. So he explains all kind of details. So imagine a person had all these facilities, all these cushions and beds and pillows and everything. If that person is having the kind of fear in his mind, if that person is having anger in his mind, if that person is having a kind of attachment or yearning lust for something, do you think that such a person, even though he has those conditions, can sleep well? He asked from the Hattaka. And he said, no, Venerable Sir. He may have all these comfortable conditions, but if he having issues in his mind, having fear, anxiety, too much attachment to something, worries, he will not be able to sleep. Then the Buddha said that now you have to understand what really help you to sleep well is to have a peaceful mind. So if you have a peaceful mind, you even can sleep under these difficult conditions. So now you can ask a question from yourself, do you sleep well? Of course, now, the most of the developed countries, where they have all kind of facilities, many of people are suffering from insomnia, suffering from lack of sleep. They have all comfortable, place, all sealed windows, no problem with the winter, all heating systems, but people are having problem of sleeping. There's a big medical industry actually to help people to sleep. But of course, the best way to sleep according to Buddhist tradition is actually to practice loving kindness meditation. One of the benefits of practicing loving kindness meditation is being able to sleep well. So the point is actually the inner world. How to manage the inner world is the key for us to live our life, to increase the quality of our life. So if you don't know those techniques, no matter how many other facilities we may have, we still have problems. Even we will not be able to sleep well. So that's the point. So that's why it's so important to learn the Buddhist guidelines to how to handle particularly our negative emotions. So what we call emotions? Have you experienced emotions in your life? Why not, right? What we call emotions? Emotions are more like actually more kind of energetic moments in our life. So we live our life, we encounter something, and then we suddenly become agitated inside. So if you look at the process of your mind as a stream, the experience of an emotion is like a wave coming, or like a bump in your process of mental life. So the emotions are usually have certain kind of energy, both wholesome and unwholesome. Certain kind of energy make you energetic, influence your body. It's like a high moment in our mental life. But we call some emotions as negative emotions. Can you give me an example of a negative emotion? What do you think as a negative emotion? An example? Anger. Anyone else? Any other suggestion? Sadness. Yes, good. Anger, sadness, and one more. Looks like we are not familiar with negative emotions, which is a good sign. Oh, jealousy. Okay. So, right now we got 3. Anger, sadness, jealousy. So these are the moments in our life, in our mind, that have some kind of energetic response to something. Why we call them negative? Oh, that's a good definition, right? So any mental moments, any bump in our mind, any kind of mental wave, any kind of energetic moments in our mental life that produce unhappiness can be called a negative emotion. So you're unhappy when you have anger? What do you think? Are you happy when you're having anger? No, really, right? Yeah. So we can try to apply, whether. So one definition will be the emotional, energetic emotional experience can be negative when those states produce unhappiness. Yeah, actually, that's also a kind of Buddhist definition, like how what we can call an emotion a negative emotion. Not necessarily those emotions are inherently bad or inherently evil. There's no such concept in Buddhism. But these emotions create kind of affliction in our mind, create kind of unhappiness, unrest in our mind. And not only that, those emotions also impair the clarity of our mind. They impair our ability to make decisions. So any mental states, energetic mental state that can cloud your mind, destroy the clarity of your mind, and then of course generate more kind of conflict inside, unrest, unhappiness. And they can be called negative emotions. Actually, it's a very practical definition, because the emotions are not categorized in Buddhism as negative based on think like they are against some kind of dogma in Buddhism. But they are very practical definition. Mainly, any mental states that are not helpful, unhelpful, are negative emotions because they are not helping us. That's the point. That is why we have, in Buddhism, we have two terms, what we call kusala and akusala. When it comes to mental states, we divide our mental states not as evil and whatever the other one, evil and good. Actually, how we divide our mental states as kusala, which means skillful, and akusala, which are unskillful. So there are mental states which are skillful, there are mental states that are unskillful. There are helpful mental states, they are unhelpful mental states. We just have to deal with them. There's nothing evil in them, but they are just unhelpful. And because they are unhelpful, they can also be harmful. Harmful to oneself and also harmful to others. So whenever, that is the nature of negative emotion. They bring unhappiness, they can be harmful also. And particularly, first of all, to the person who was having them. And then can be to other people also. And Buddha has said that person who is try to harm someone with anger is like a person who want to hit someone with a heated iron bar. If you want to hit someone with a heated iron bar, what's going to happen? You will take the heated iron bar and give a very strong, stroke against the person. If your hit is successful, if you have good aim, you will hit the other person. Whether you hit the other person or not, one thing is sure, which is when you hit someone with a heated iron bar, your hand is already burned, whether you hit the person or not. So that's how the Buddha explains an angry person. So it can be harmful to us, it can be harmful to others. So that is the definition of negative emotions. But then, what we have to learn when we deal with negative emotions is to understand how they arise in our mind. How negative emotions arise in our mind. Right? We don't experience them all the time. Do you experience negative emotions now? I don't see in your face. I don't know but what is happening inside you. But so, for example, we don't have negative emotions now, but they can arise. They can arise when you go to the road, they can arise when you go home, they can arise when you go back to work tomorrow. So they can arise. But how they can arise? It's an important question. So before we go into the Buddha's teaching of how emotions arise, can we make our own investigation? And that's what the Buddha encourages us to do, right? And can we remind ourselves the last time that we experienced one negative emotions? Do you remember the last time, like today or yesterday, maybe a few days ago, the moment that you really got really angry? Or do you remember a moment that you got really afraid of something? Fear? Fear is also a negative emotion. But fear can also save us in certain sense. But can you remember a moment that you feel so sad or so worried? Okay, I would like to give you 1 minute. Okay, let's revisit that moment. Let's try to understand actually how exactly that negative emotions arose in our mind. It's a good experiment to do. And try to remember an event, recent event, because you may still remember the things happen around it. Very recent event that you experience a negative emotion. Could be anger, could be sadness, could be fear, could be jealousy, anything. Don't worry, nobody's going to see it, only you yourself. Be honest and try to reflect and take a moment. I will tell you, take a moment, I watch the clock, take a moment to remember that event. Maybe this morning, maybe yesterday, maybe a few days ago. Remind yourself that specific event where you really experience strong negative emotion. try to investigate what happened just before that. What triggered that emotion? Who else with you when you are experiencing that emotion? What was the causes and conditions that gave rise to that emotion? What happened before? What else did you remember at that time? How other people interacted with you at that time? Try to analyze all these surrounding conditions. Okay. Okay, I hope that you are not experiencing an emotion now, but you can revisit it. So were you able to find out what happened just before that? And then what was the beginning point of that emotion? That is so important. Like a beginning point of that emotion. And what fed that emotion? Okay, so I'm going to give you a Buddhist description of how the origin of emotion, how emotion can arise and what's going to happen, and try to relate your own memory, your experience, your reflection now. So there are few suttas, few discourses of the Buddha that we can use to understand the Buddhist description of how emotion can arise, a theory of emotion. One important sutta is called the Madhupindika Sutta. We call it Honey Bowl Sutta. There's another one is called Mula Paryaya Sutta. And then there's also another one called Sabbasava Sutta, about tense. So based on these few discourses, and there's a gradual causal process of arising of any emotion. And any emotions can arise in our mind due to causes and conditions. So it is simply a causal process. We are not, so as long as these causes and conditions are present, we will experience those emotions. So the way it explains, and our emotional experience, beginning point of our emotional experience is a sensory encounter of something, a sensory stimulus. We will say something, or hear something, smell something, taste something, feel something to our body, or we'll have a memory of something. The mind acts as a sensory organ. So we have to have some sensory input as the beginning point. Now you can relate your own experience. What did you see? What did you hear? Somebody scolding you. That will be the first voice, the sound you heard. That could be the beginning point. So sensory stimulus, some sensory encounter. That's the beginning. Once we have that sensory encounter, or see, hear, or smell, or taste, or feel, or remember something, the initial feeling of that will be what we call sensation, or Vedana in Pali. Kind of, we feel it either as a pleasant thing, or an unpleasant thing, or a neutral thing. If it is sound, it can be unpleasant, like a loud sound. It could be a pleasant sound. It could be a neutral sound. Something that we see can also be a pleasant image, unpleasant image, neutral image. So we get that quality, either pleasantness or unpleasantness or neutral. That's actually those things are happening very quickly. We are really actually splitting milliseconds here. So the sensory encounter and sensations related to that sensory encounter, that is the beginning. And then, very important part is actually we interpret that sensory encounter. We interpret it, we perceive it, we give a meaning to that sound. We give a meaning to that thing that we see, or something we feel, or memory. We interpret it. And then based on our interpretation, then we can have an emotional experience. So emotional experiences entirely depends on how we interpret that sound or that sensory encounter. So then of course, once you have the emotional experience, emotional experience not only something happen in the mind, but also it influences our body, it affects our body also. Usually if it's a negative emotion, it's not something comfortable. When we have a negative emotion, it's also uncomfortable in our body. And therefore, we also have a habit of reacting to this uncomfortable sensation happening in us. We have a negative emotions and then we do something. We quickly react as a way of handling that discomfort. So, sensory encounter, initial sensation, and our interpretation. Based on the interpretation, emotional experience. And I can give one example. Like let's say you are sleeping in the night at home. You hear a sound of footsteps. Somebody's coming. You hear the sound of, of somebody's stepping, coming. If you interpret this sound, stranger. Can be someone's going to break the house. What do you feel? Fear. And you hear the same sound that you interpret, could be my friend is coming. Or maybe, your family member is coming. Finally he's at home. What do you feel? Something else, right? So based on the interpretation, we will experience an emotion. So interpretation is important. Of course, in that case, you better to have, the interpretation of a stranger and then make sure it's not a stranger because that is good for survival. But actually, most of the other time, we also interpret. Like, let's say you are talking to your children, maybe your husband or wife or someone in your family. When you're talking to that person may be in the phone, texting and doing something. You talk and talk and talk. The person is not paying attention. Texting. Then how you will interpret that sensory encounter? The person is texting when you talk to that person. How you will interpret that? What will be our interpretation? When you talk to that person is texting. So how you interpret that? What that person is doing? Not listening to you, ignoring you. If we interpret that, this person is ignoring me, don't want to listen to me, and then you have appropriate negative emotions. That person is ignoring me. But can we be sure? Maybe ignoring you, but maybe when we went to that person, is already texting, he was replying something. We didn't really ask even, can I have a word with you? We even didn't say anything. We just start our own conversation, our own statement. That person was middle of something. Who knows that person is like replying an important email. He just want to finish that before that person want to listen to us. We don't know. But without really clarifying anything, we quickly interpret it as ignoring. If you interpret as ignoring, and then there will be a emotion according to that. But if you interpret something else, there will be another emotion. So the key here is to understand our interpretation of the event, interpretation of the situation, interpretation of facial gesture, whatever, is the key factor to decide what kind of emotion that we are going to experience. And then the other one is happening, which is we are reacting to the emotion. Somehow, when you're going through kind of sadness or anger or fear, whatever, we don't hold it for a while. We quickly want to do something. And we are reacting to the emotions also. The way we react to our emotions are habits. We have developed habits throughout our life to react to our negative emotions in many different ways. And sometimes we have habits of suppressing. So we think that we shouldn't feel sad. We think that we shouldn't feel angry because, people think it's bad. People have said that it's bad. So one habit of reacting to our emotions is suppressing it. Try to hide it. Don't want to show it. Bite your teeth. And that's one habit. how you react to the emotion. You already have it and you try to suppress it and try to be as if you are not angry or you're not sad. That's one way. The second one is sometimes we have habit of blaming, habit of finding someone to like put the blame on because we are going through this emotion. So if we have a habit of blaming, we will accuse people. We will accuse the traffic. We will accuse government. And we can accuse, you will find someone to accuse. So we accuse. That's the second habit. And sometimes we also have a habit of being aggressive, habit of threatening. No, habit of controlling actually, habit of controlling. But the moment you have the experience of emotion, you want to control everyone. You want to make sure that everyone is under your control. So we start to threaten people. You like to raise your voice. And then that's another habit. And you can now, think what is your habit, And then there's also another habit which is actually distracting ourselves. Whenever we are going through negative emotions, sometimes we have a habit of distracting ourselves, not to be in that emotion, try to find something else. So that is where we will either try to find something to distract ourselves, maybe start eating something, try to entertain ourselves something, and even sometimes use substance abuse, drugs or whatever, to numb yourself, to distract yourself from the emotion. You don't want to deal with this sadness, deal with this anger, deal with this fear, and you distract yourself by consuming something. So if you have a habit of distracting ourselves, we will try to consume something. Maybe sweet, maybe other kind of food, maybe drink, maybe another kind of substance. Those are the normal habits of reacting to emotions. We suppress it, we throw it out, blaming it, or we try to threaten someone, or we try to distract ourselves by drinking or eating something. So those are the normal way that we deal with emotions. But when we learn the habit of, when we learn these habits, we really have to reflect that none of these habits are healthy. And there can be also habit of withdrawing. Habit of withdrawing. Don't want to handle it, so we will hide. We will disappear, we will hide somewhere. We don't want to talk to anyone. We want to be alone ourselves. We go and shut down the door and stay in the room. That could be one habit. So there can be different kind of habits, the way we react to our emotions. According to the Buddhist way of dealing with emotions, none of these ways are healthy. And none of these ways are going to help us in any way. So what we have these techniques is given in the suttas. Actually, instead of try to react quickly, we should be willing to experience our emotions openly. And that's what we call observing the emotion, developing more awareness of the emotion. All those, the process of the emotion. Remember, we talk about sensory encounter, sensation, interpretation, experience of emotion, and react to that emotion. Those processes, those steps are happening not consciously. Those things are happening very quickly, every moment in our life. But those steps are moving from one to the other, without our knowing of it. That's an interesting thing happening here. We are not conscious of this process. It's once a trigger is there, once we see or hear something, and without our knowing, we can simply move to those steps of the emotional experience, and we do it. We do it many times a day without really knowing about it. That is how people live their life. They see something, hear something, there's an inbuilt pattern how you react to that, how you interpret that, how you react to that, and they end up being reacting, and then creating, of course, more problems, and then the cycle continue. And most of the people live their life like that, without conscious awareness of what is really happening here. So what Buddhism encourages us to actually first learn this. This is how the mind is working. But then develop conscious awareness of this whole process, how this is happening. When you really become aware of it, you will realize your own patterns. Oh, I have a habit of withdrawing. I have a habit of accusing. And when you learn that, don't start criticizing you again. When you learn that, we begin to observe it. And you are almost like learning a lesson of human mind. Of course, you use your own mind, but you're actually learning about the human mind. And we can start learning about the mind rather than criticizing. And that's the Buddhist approach, to bring conscious awareness to this process. Otherwise, we will do things without really knowing, and automatically inbuilt, we are reacting that. And there's an interesting story I read recently. There was an old woman who went to some place and looking for a parking space. And we went one round very slowly, went another round, and finally she found a nice spot. So being an old lady, she was very careful, so she wanted to reverse her car into that nice spot. She was taking her time and slowly, looking at the mirrors and try to come back. And then suddenly there was a young boy came with another car. When she was slowly trying to put her car in that space, that young boy quickly turned and then park his car on that spot. Okay, good moment to have negative emotions, right? And then of course, the old lady got really upset and she lowered the window and asked from the guy who came out from the car, "Didn't you see that I was going to park that spot? Why did you do that?" The young boy has no concern. He says, "Oh, because I'm young and fast." And made her more angry. Right? So now, I'm young and fast. And then he ignored the young lady and he just continued to walk. Of course, she has a habit of reaction, So then when he was just about to enter the building, he heard a big sound, bang. When he looked back, actually what he saw, the old lady was, parking her car right into the boy's car and actually bump right in front of that car. The front part is like broken and hanging. And now the young boy got really upset and ran back and asked the old lady, "Didn't you see my car is already there? Why did you park your car right in the spot that my car is there?" The old lady very patiently said that, "Because I'm old." Because, mistake can happen when I'm old. I can't see things well. I'm old and I'm rich. I have good insurance to pay. Because the boy said that I'm young and fast. The lady said I'm old and rich. So that could be the way. This is a pattern, this pattern, like how you threatening, So sometimes people are like that, reacting in that way. But all these things happen without our conscious awareness. That's the funny thing about our life. So what we can really do, just like we laugh at this lady, we can actually start looking at our own mind, how our mind is trying to do certain things, how our mind is trying to behave in a particular way, and you catch it. I catch you. I see it. So bring that kind of awareness, that kind of curiosity, that kind of investigating mind to our own mind. And we call it mindfulness, we call it sati. Sati. So when you start to observe that, and you bring whole change to emotional life. Because actually negative emotions can continue in our mind, can grow in our mind as long as we are not aware of them. As long as we are looking away from them, they can grow. The moment you become aware of the negative emotions, the moment you become aware of your anger, the moment you become aware of your fear, right there, it's not going to go away soon, but right there, it stops growing further. And then you can actually experience that whole emotion right there. And that's the important technique. Actually, this is more like, usually people try to suppress it, and people try to express in different ways. Just like this lady expressed it, and sometimes we suppress it, and both are not healthy. But what Buddhism is asking us, like a third option. Instead of suppressing it or expressing it either way of threatening or accusing or withdrawing, what we can do actually to start observing it. It's not suppressing. It's not also blindly expressing it. You're not denying that you're having sadness, anger, fear, but you simply bring awareness, you turn your attention inward, you observe it as it is. That's a very interesting way of dealing with negative emotion, and that's application of mindfulness. So when you look at that emotion, it gives you more options to what to do with it. Because otherwise, if we are not aware of that, we are very quick to react to that emotions. So either we go to the blaming habit, or withdrawal habit, or distracting habit. We very quickly go there. We don't stay in that emotion long. We want to react very quickly. But if we have this training to look into our own mind and observe it, the moment we observe it, we already kind of reduce the weight of that emotion, because you can still have the anger, but you become aware that anger is there. And you create a distance, kind of distance between the emotion and yourself. And it gives you kind of courage, kind of ability to hold that emotion without any damage. When you develop mindfulness, the ability to be aware, this ability of observation, you create a space in your mind, you can hold the negative emotion without harming yourself or others. That's a potential, that's a skill that we all can develop. Simply observing our own mind, observing the emotion, and even exploring the different details of that emotion. How our body is reacting. What is really happening here? Don't hurry to react. Don't hurry to get rid of this. But observe it as it is happening there. And observe how I feel mentally, what kind of energy is there, and what is happening in the body, which part of my body is tight. So your attention is not outside, but attention is inside. This is a very, very short moment of observation. I'm not asking you to meditate right there. When you are driving along the road and somebody happen to come behind you and very fast and cut you across. Okay, now what do you feel? Right? And that's sensory encounter, right? And then you have it's a scary thing, and then you will interpret it. How will you interpret it? Oh, that person want to show himself off, right? Or that person want to threaten me. So based on your interpretation, then you have the emotion. But who knows? That person maybe has nothing to do with you, but that person is maybe hurry to go somewhere. Who knows that whether that person's wife is giving birth to a child in the hospital? I mean, he's having other concerns. Who knows? But we will interpret it as it's against me. Most of our interpretations are ego-oriented. We think that people do things kind of attacking me. People have their own issues. They don't have time to worry about you. But we interpret that many things that people do are actually against me. But they're having their own issues too, right? So that's why the interpretation is very key here. So, however, usually we interpret as threatening us, doing to us. And then as a result, we'll have the experience of anger. But now, when you have this experience of anger, you watch that person, you really want to know who that person is, whether it's a male or a female, a young one or an old one, what kind of person is this. We really our focus is always there. Let me see who is that. But instead of paying attention outward, if we can switch right there, our attention inward. Oh, interesting. What I am feeling now. I saw this person came and cut across me. That is really happened outside, but so interesting what is happening inside here. And you turn your attention and observe, okay, what I am going through now. What do I feel now? That very observation already reduced the gravity of the emotion, and then you can make a conscious decision what you want to do with it, instead like going to that habitual reaction, honking or like I don't know, whatever reaction. You can take some time and make a decision. Okay, I'm going through this, but as long as you are aware of it, as long as you are observing it, you are safe. It's not going to grow further, and you're not going to react out blindly. And then you can know about this emotion. We can know about how sadness feels like, how fear feels like, how anger feels like, which part of the body is tense, which part of the body is changing, how the breath is changing. We can observe all these details. It's like experiment right there. And knowing more about the Dhamma, this is like learning Abhidhamma in practice, in action. Like learning a machine when it's running. So you can observe it. And then once you observe it, what you can do, if you know the Buddhist explanation of the arising of emotion, we know that key to this emotion is interpretation. So once you observe it, that's the first guideline, is to observe it willingly, honestly, openly. You're not going to deny it. You're not going to blame yourself for having anger or sadness. That's normal, that's natural. You simply observe it, fully experience it and feel it. Once you feel it, and it will subside a little bit, and then you can go to the next step, investigate or re-evaluate your interpretation. If we are going through emotion, that is based on an interpretation of an event, interpretation of an incident. Re-evaluate that interpretation. If you want to change the emotion, don't struggle with the emotions. Go to the interpretation. And if you can change the interpretation, automatically the emotions will be changed. And the key is to go back to the interpretation and try to re-evaluate it. And usually we don't have to believe our first impression. When you see something or hear something, we quickly interpret it. We are very quickly interpret it. Sometimes our interpretation may not be valid, may not be correct. We should be willing to re-evaluate our interpretation. Then if we change the interpretation, if we try to understand the same thing, but try to interpret it different way, maybe bring more perspective to that, you can change your emotions too. There's another interesting story. One day a father was having a bike ride with his daughter into a remote area. So when they were biking, they came across with a shop selling fruits. And the daughter asked, can we buy some apples? So father bought 2 apples for both of them. So they bought the apples and they were riding back home. Along the way, father felt thirsty and feel like eating something. So daughter was behind and asked the daughter, can I have an apple? Daughter, as soon as father asked for apple, daughter took 1 apple and had a bite of it. Father, I am the one who asked the apple. She's the one who's biting it. And then the next moment she took the next apple and also had a bite on it too. She bite both apples. Father was so upset. Father thought that she's eating the apples. He had bites in both apples because he interpreted that she's so greedy. She won't eat both apples. So being afraid of being afraid of, like giving 1 apple to the father. So the father thought that, my daughter is so greedy. I really had to teach her, train her, because she just had two bites in the apple. So he was having upset, having this thing. And after a while, daughter called father, Daddy, have this one. This tastes better. Actually, the daughter had bite in both apples, not out of greediness to like eat both apples. She wanted to find out which tastes the best for her father. So sometimes we may interpret things wrongly. We may interpret people are texting because they're ignoring us. Maybe not. We have to have more evaluation of it. Our first impression can be wrong, actually. Maybe, so sometimes, when you go to work, we have friends, people greet each other, and one day, one person didn't greet you. You greeted the person, but that person ignored you, didn't greet you back. And now you interpret, this person having some issues with me. That person is unfriendly to me. So that's how we interpret it. You feel sad. Sometimes you feel anger. You observe it and feel it, and then, okay, why that person didn't smile with me? Of course, my interpretation was that, she was trying to ignore me, or she's not friendly with me. But who knows? Maybe that person is having a bad day. Maybe at home she had some problem. So he even didn't see me, because he's thinking about those things. Maybe his daughter is in hospital, whoever, whatever. Actually, that person didn't smile with me, didn't greet me, not because having some issues with me, maybe having issues on his own. Who knows? So let's suspend the judgment, and then your anger will be gone. So always second guideline is to re-evaluate our interpretation. If we change that, we can change the emotion too. The third guideline is actually, once you re-evaluate and forgive yourself, and understand that this is the nature of the mind. This is the nature of the ordinary mind, to experience negative emotions. But we can grow beyond that. The whole teachings of Buddhism is to grow beyond the ordinary level. But you have to forgive yourself. You don't have to blame yourself for having that. Forgive yourself, and acknowledge and forgive yourself, and also forgive others. You can use your own understanding of experience and emotion. The same mistakes can be done by others. Same habitual patterns can be repeated by others too. So forgive yourself and forgive others, what we call empathy. And when you do that, you feel okay with that. And one thing we have to do is actually, when it comes to emotion, we try to identify ourselves with emotions. That's one important mistake we do. Whenever we are having emotions, we think that is me. We try to identify ourselves with the emotion. Sometimes we try to identify ourselves with the patterns of emotion. There's an interesting Buddhist term that is used for negative emotions. In Pali, one term that we use for negative emotions is called asava. That is why the sutta goes sabba asava, the all asava. Asava is a very interesting Pali term. The term asava has a meaning of flowing inward. Flowing inward. Influxus. That's an interesting term. So our negative emotions are influxes, flowing inward. That means the emotions are visitors. They're not necessarily inherent part of us. We may have potential to have them, but those emotions arise when the appropriate conditions are there. So they are more like coming towards us, flowing inwards, influxes. In simple terms, emotions are visitors. If emotions are visitors, you don't have to identify yourself with the emotions. You don't have to identify yourself with the negative patterns, because of course they have been like negative patterns, but they're not necessarily inherent part of us. We have learned them. They are habits, but if you want, we can also unlearn them. So very English phrase that we use when you are going through emotions can create a wrong identification with the emotion. When we are sad, we say, I am sad. When we are angry, we say, I am angry. Look at these sentence patterns. I am angry. You already kind of create a very strong identification, like I am Sam. like I am Wendy. I am angry. I am sad. I am afraid. You already, without unconsciously, you created identity. You identify yourself with the emotion. But actually, the correct way is that you are not angry. Anger has arisen in you. When these causes and conditions are present, anger arises in us. That doesn't mean that it's me. Doesn't mean that it's going to be there forever. It's a causal product. So the very language can mislead us. So when we have this empathy and when we start observing and have empathy, we really have to like have that deep understanding that emotions are not really inherent part of us. They are visitors. So next time when you are angry, don't say, I am angry. You say, anger has arisen in me. That's the very more realistic, closer to the truth. Don't say, I'm sad. Sadness has arisen in me. They are visitors. And then, if you feed these things, and they will stay longer. You know, the food for the emotions are the thoughts, memories. So if we have anger, if you try to remember the similar things more and more and more, your anger can stay in your mind. If you have sadness, you purposely remember, oh yeah, that thing happened last year, 2 years, that happened. If you try to connect all the memories related to that, and you are feeding the emotion, and it's going to be there. So if you don't feed that, if you start observe it, the one thing that's going to happen when you start observe the emotion, you are not feeding it. You are simply observing it, and it slowly can come down, because you are not feeding it. And so if you start to treat our emotions as visitors, we can deal with them nicely. So 3 guidelines. Observe the emotion. Try to learn about it. Try to see, be willing to observe it. Because as long as you observe it honestly, turning the attention inward and observing mentally and physically what's really happening there, you are safe. Although it's really strong emotion, you are safe. And then you can learn about emotion, and by right there you're not feeding it, and gradually it can subside. And then the second guideline is to go to your interpretation and try to reevaluate it and see make sure whether you don't really believe that, whatever interpretation is always correct, and try to reevaluate it. And once you do that, you can forgive yourself and accept it and have some empathy, compassion to yourself, and also develop the same understanding to others. I would like to end this talk sharing with you another story. This is also about a father and daughter, but this is like a more adult daughter. This daughter in his mid-20s, having so many problems in her life. Her relationship was broken. She lost her job. She was trying to find some direction in her life. And she decided to go back to her father and get some advice. She went to father and explained all the kind of difficult things happening one after the other in her life. And Father, can you help me to deal with them? Father happened to be a cook, a chef. Instead of giving any instructions to her, Father asked, okay, let us go to kitchen and do something. And he took 3 pots and put water into 3 pots. And put all 3 pots in 3 stove. Father, what are you going to do? Okay, let's boil some water. And they keep talking about the problems, and after 3 minutes, the water was boiling. And then Father took a potato and put potato into 1 pot. Father, what are you going to cook? Okay, for next few minutes you will see. And then he took an egg and put that egg into the 2nd pot. And then, what you are going to put in the 3rd pot? The daughter asked. This is what it is. He took a few coffee beans and put that coffee bean into 3rd pot. Okay, now all the 3 pots are boiling. Okay, let's wait for a few minutes. After a few minutes, Father asked daughter, okay, now let's go and see what has happened to these things. All these 3 things has exposed to same conditions, which is the hot water. They took the potato out. What has happened to potato? Become soft, become malleable, can be crushed very easily. Earlier it was strong, but now it has become, soft and malleable. Interesting. And then they go into the 2nd pot, which is the egg, and ask the daughter examine what has happened to the egg. What happened to the egg when you boil it? Become harder. Something opposite has happened, right? The potato went from being hard to soft and malleable, and then the egg has become hard and solid. Interesting. And then, Father, okay, now look at the 3rd one, where the coffee bean was boiling. What has happened there? Oh, the whole water turned into a very nice coffee with nice aroma. the whole water has been changed. And then the father told the daughter, if you look at the potato and the egg, and this is how we deal with our emotions, our issues in our lives. Sometimes we are a potato. When we deal with difficult issues, our emotions, we are like a potato, become so crushed, so malleable, don't know to handle it, want to run away, cry, or like a potato, like can be, very easily crushed. But some days, we are like an egg, very aggressive, become hard and solid, right? We can be aggressive, violent, blaming everyone. Sometimes we throw things away, break things, become so violent and aggressive. That's being an egg. So now you can think, am I a potato and egg? So some days we may be a potato and egg. Maybe we have a habit of being a potato more than an egg, or maybe an egg more than a potato. And imagine that, what's going to happen to people around us. If you're an egg, you're going to you're going to hurt many people. If you're a potato, you're going to hurt yourself a lot also. But in that process also, you create troubles for others too. But then Father told, okay, this is how you usually handle issues in our life. But we have a third option. When you come to the coffee bean, so in the earlier two cases, the potato and the egg both became victim to the situations. They became victim to the hot water. But the coffee bean has some kind of wisdom. Instead of being a victim to the situation, coffee bean had the skill to somehow understand the situation and transform the situation. Without being affected by it, being completely become victim to it, the coffee bean has transformed the situation and changed the hot water into a nice drink. And Father said that you had to be a coffee bean. I think the Buddhist guidelines that we learn, observing our emotions, re-evaluating our interpretation, and forgiving in yourself and others can help you to be a coffee bean. Do you like to be a coffee bean? Yes. So that's not being a victim of the situation. You use your observation, your mindfulness, you observe it, you reevaluate the interpretation, you react consciously. You say things, you do things consciously, not out of habit, not out of urge. Consciously, you can navigate the situation. You can convert an argument into a conversation, into a dialogue, into a discussion, rather than throwing anger. Mindfully, you observe your own anger, you reevaluate, and you purposely say something that's not really trigger the other person's anger, but redirect the conversation to something, some fruitful direction. So you are being coffee bean, right? Not being affected by the argument and blame. You're kind of being aware of it and transforming it and redirecting into a dialogue and conversation and discussion. So that's the skill that we can develop. So I hope that you remember to observe your emotions, reevaluate your interpretations, and forgiving yourself and others, and then transform the situation instead of being a victim. So I wish all of you to be able to be a coffee bean, to be emotionally intelligent people. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante, for the enlightened talk. Any questions?
Time for questions, and if you like to ask anything, more clarification or anything, you can ask now.
Good evening, Bhante.
Yes. Can you start? Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. The question I have, I've learned something from your sharing today, and it's about being very conscious of one's emotions. How does one handle when, after trying and the situation and being conscious about it, able to catch it maybe 5-6 times, but if the same situation keeps repeating itself and it doesn't improve, and you find that it is slipping, the ability to control yourself after umpteen times. How do you persist and continue and keep up with the practice, Bhante? Thank you.
Thank you, sister. I think if I understood your question correctly, you're saying that sometimes we are able to catch our emotions, but still we react in the same way. Is that the question? That sometimes we can catch ourselves being angry, being upset, whatever, but we cannot change the reaction.
So, for example,
Yes.
maybe if I give an example
Yes.
where you have someone who is rude to you, and you know it's wrong to be rude back,
Yeah.
and you give the benefit of maybe that person is having a bad day,
Okay. Yeah.
and the next day it happens again, and you keep telling yourself, okay, maybe he's had another bad day, but by the end of maybe 2 months, every day is the same situation. The other party just keeps being rude to you. How do you continue to keep the cool?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you, sister. So it's like sometimes when we are more mindful and patient, and people can make use of us. Like, so people can make you like a doormat, right? Yeah. Okay, how to deal with that? Okay. Actually, the dealing with emotions with observation and reevaluating our interpretation and being empathy doesn't mean that we are always silent and accepting what other people are doing. So when you follow these techniques, what's going to happen is we become fully conscious of the whole thing, and then we can actually do things, say things, and make decisions with conscious awareness. So we still can, let's say somebody is being cruel to you, and then, being cruel is very, very, broad. It can be our own interpretation too. Like, there's a very common, who knows? Maybe we can say, okay, somebody is speaking with loud voice. Somebody is speaking with raised voice. That could be more actual, actual situation. Somebody is talking to us in a loud, like raised voice, or whatever. So what's going to happen there is that it hurt us, but our reaction is not driven by our urges, our impulse, or our habitual patterns. We observe it, and we create that awareness, and we actually stop our burning inside first. And then you get the opportunity to talk to that person with full awareness, with full control. So it doesn't mean that we are always being, very submissive, we are always being like submissive and silent. No. We can talk to that person that you are using abusive language, and abusive in a very, like, not really like with anger, but explaining everything in a very systematic way. You are using of these words, using of these things are abuses, is hurting me, and that's how I understand it. And you can express your concern about that. So we say that like that is, there's a story about, have you heard about the story about that cobra? This is a folk story that can help you, sister. So one day a cobra saw a hermit in the forest, was meditating. And this is a folk story, and don't take serious, but the lesson is serious. This cobra went to this hermit and asked, what you are doing? I'm meditating. What do you meditate? I meditate loving kindness. I wish all beings to be well and happy, and that's will benefit me. And cobra was also quite interested in practicing that. So he learned the loving kindness meditation from this ascetic, and he himself also started practicing. So he stopped killing the animals. He only ate the dead animals, and he practicing that. And one day, an old lady came to the forest to collect firewood. She collected all the firewood, and she was looking for something to tie those firewood, some kind of creeper. She had a bad eyesight, so she saw a nice rope is lying on the ground. So he mistook the cobra to be a rope. She dragged the cobra, and cobra realized that, somebody is dragging me. But I'm not supposed to, strike or bite. I'm practicing loving kindness. So he kept silent, being submissive. So then she took the cobra and tied that whole firewood, and it was so painful. The biting and she's dragging everything and tightening it, having all kind of pain, but it endure everything out of loving kindness. And she took that took that firewood home, and by that time it's all this, all these bones are also like damaged, everything had so many bones. And there actually she untied the cobra, thinking that it's a rope, and she took the firewood, and now cobra with all kind of pains and and she's slowly moving. She really want to go and see the hermit and complain, this is what happened to me as a result of practicing loving kindness. So went to the hermit, and look at me, what has happened to me. I have all these wounds, everything, and I was practicing loving kindness. It didn't really help me. Then the hermit said that actually you have not really practiced loving kindness there. Maybe you practice foolishness. It's okay to be loving and kind. At least you should inform, you should show that lady that you are a cobra. You don't have to like bite her. You can just hiss without poisoning. That's the tricky point. How we can hiss without poisoning. So we can tell people who I am, what are our values, what are our principles, what are our preferences, without really hurting them. So we can practice that. Look, okay, but in order to hiss without poisoning, we have to first watch our own anger. If we start to react, and you are really hitting, you are really poisoning others, and it's not really going to help. So if we can use these techniques first to observe our own anger and not act out of impulse, not act out of habit, and first calm ourselves down, and then with very conscious awareness and really talking to the point, not really going all over the place, talking to the point and explain how did we feel and what are our principles and what are my values, and you can suggest how that person can behave the next time. It's not really about being submissive. So we can hiss without poisoning.
Bhante, there's one question here. Okay. Hello. Bhante, thank you for the coffee beans example about the person texting and not listening when you are talking to him. What if he is really sending texts and not paying full attention to us talking? Yeah. Can Bhante advise how to deal with that?
Yeah. You may probably having these issues with your teenage son or daughter most of the time, but it can happen with husband and wives too. Yeah, of course, people can definitely ignore us. They can, maybe whenever you want to talk to them, maybe they can take their phone out and start texting. Yeah, so that can really happen. I think the one way we can do it, actually, we have to be very skillful in our communication. If you really want to have an important discussion with someone, with your family members, and first we can say, I really like to talk to you. I have a very important thing to talk. Do you have time? Or you can say, if you are a parent, maybe, and I really like to talk to you about something. Can we have a meeting, and can we talk in 10 minutes? Give that person some time to prepare and finish whatever things we do. So if we have that prior arrangement, giving some respect to the person also, because we can't expect the other person to be ready whenever we feel like talking to that person. So giving some respect and giving some choice to that person can help. So what we usually do, we kind of demand. Okay, put your phone down and listen to me. When you make that demand, whenever we make a demand from someone, the person only has two choices, two options, either to submit to us or to rebel against us. We are only giving two options to that person. So he will do whatever. He may submit to us, and that's also not good for the personality, and maybe that person may rebel us. But if you make a request, a kind request, I would like to talk to you about the important thing. When do you think that you have time for that? Or can we meet in 10 minutes? So you give some kind of options. You are not really putting that person into only two option situation. So and then maybe we can have better conversation. So I think, giving that kind of, arrangement and, communicating with more like mindfulness, and then skillfully we will be able to deal with certain things. And an important thing is like, approach that person with our own wholesome control mindfulness. Because if you approach to anyone with anger, and that can influence the other person too. So I hope that will help, right? Yeah.
Any more questions from the floor before I read out another questions? Okay, I have a questions regarding emotions. The more I practice mindfulness towards emotion, the more I feel emotionless. Emotionless. Because emotionless.
Okay.
Because all emotions are impermanent, and if we let the good emotions stay, that is a kind of attachment and craving for more good emotion. How are we supposed to feel?
Okay. I think there actually we really have to examine how we divide wholesome emotion and unwholesome emotions. And if you think about, like, if you talk about wholesome emotions in the Buddhist context are loving kindness, compassion, and even like feeling like sharing. I don't think that we can attach these emotions, because those emotions arise as a result of letting go. So, but if we think about like a happiness and joy, that kind of thing as positive emotions, yeah, it is possible that we can have attachment to that. But in true sense, if you follow the real Buddhist guidelines, so observing our negative emotions and not feeding them and let them die, and then developing wholesome emotions is really the part of the Buddhist practice. So I don't think that we can attach to loving kindness. You can develop more inclination, more interest in developing loving kindness. Is very different from attaching to loving kindness. And attachment is like you can't impulsive, you can't live without it, and you are being like driven by it. But having interest in developing loving kindness is very different. And it's the way, it's okay. Having an interest to have more compassion, having an interest to have more loving kindness, have an interest to have more attitude of sharing, and those things are good things. So I don't see a possibility of being attached in a wrong way to positive emotions or like wholesome emotions, because wholesome emotions themselves are a result of reducing our ego attachment. You can't have compassion having attachment, like ego perspective. So it's go against it. So go ahead, and that is why we do loving kindness meditation. We cultivate our loving kindness. We try to enhance it. So no danger there. Yeah.
Hi Bhante, I have a questions on traumatic emotions due to accidents. I have fears. How to overcome it? Despite being a victim to this accident, there are some people who do not show true compassion. Please advise. Thank you.
I think whenever we encounter very difficult, very that kind of accidents, that kind of situation, is very common. It's very natural that we have those memories, and whenever we see similar things, similar sounds, similar vision can trigger the same emotions. It's very natural. So we had to deal with gradually. Of course, it's very important to have some kind of therapy. So of course, Buddhist techniques themselves may not be strong enough if we are really going through that, episodes again, post-traumatic situation. You really need to take some professional help for that. But what Buddhist techniques can help you, once you get professional help, some therapeutic help, and then you will have less opportunity to have that episode, that strong emotional reaction again. Then once you get out of the serious situation, then the Buddhist guidelines can help us to prevent relapses of that emotional reaction. So we first need to get professional help, and then we can use Buddhist guidelines to prevent them having again. But one thing we can learn from the Buddhist guidelines is actually the trigger, whatever the thing, that trigger point, because we whenever we see that, we go to that memory again. So if we can be aware of that very trigger, so it's only a sound. If we can remind you, it's only a sound. It's only a sensation, not really that. So the more you observe that, the more you bring awareness of that very sound and suggesting yourself, it's a sound, it's a sound, it's a sound. It's a sensation, it's a sensation. The more you do that, you'll be able to like minimize or weaken the pattern of going back to that whole emotional experience. We can break that pattern by simply reminding ourselves, like saying ourselves, it's a sound, sound, and nothing else. And that is one practice we can do. The second one is actually we can do whatever happened in our past is not necessarily we try to identify ourselves with our past situations. We can be abused, we can have all kind of different experience in our life in the past, but we have now evolved from that, that incident, and we are not really the same person anymore. And every time we are changing and moving, renewing, and those things did really happen in our life, but right now I'm a completely new person. And we are changing all the time. And even you came as one person, you are leaving this place as a different person. And even in that minute level, there are so many changes. So not to create an identity with that memory. That happened, that was my old self. Now I am a new self. And this one also will change. So having that theoretical, more deeper doctrinal understanding of non-self, we are evolving process, not a one single entity, can kind of help us to disidentify. Can you say disidentify? Is there a term? Disidentify. You can help us to disassociate or disidentify ourselves with that incident. But again, the mindfulness can help to whenever we hear a similar thing, a break of a glass, and very quickly acknowledge and tell you it's a sounds, and not let that whole thought patterns and emotion to arise. Very quickly we stop right there and the very sensory experience, acknowledging that as a sound, or a smell, whatever, whatever sensory encounter. But I think first we need to get professional help.
Next question. Bhante, please advise how to deal with one who's in denial, appear to listen, but habits die hard. Same bad behaviors reappear.
This is about dealing with other people, right? So maybe we can have another topic. How to handle our relationships. This is a completely different topic, different area. Because this is not about emotion, handling negative emotions, more about improving ourselves. But that can be a foundation to help others too. So the question is that how to deal with the person who's in denial. Denial can also be another pattern of dealing with emotions and situation. And people who are in denial are the people who are most vulnerable to go to all kind of addictions. So how to deal with that person? Why do you want to deal with that person? Maybe a family member. Yes, then we have no choice. We really have to help. I think we have to be very skillful. If you really have to deal with that person, if you have no choice, then and if you really have a compassion to help that person, there's a lot of work we have to do within ourselves first before we go and help that person. And if you really want to help that person, first help yourself. There's a lot of preparation to be done within yourself to improve your own skills handling emotions, your own skills of communicating to others. So you have to spend some time in really developing this skill within us, and then we have to be very skillful in communicating these things to that person. So we have to find a good time to tell what we are seeing in that person. And we had to find a good time to explain to that person what could be the consequences of having the repeated denial. So not really confronting that person when that person is doing that right there, that will not help, because that person will be more defensive. So you have to find a good time, maybe having a good dinner, bringing him to a nice restaurant and giving him the best favorite food that the person likes. And then, very friendly, I really like to help you, I'm here to help you. And I have observed this pattern in your life and you are really denying and doing this. You can refer to some experiences, some past events, and help. This is not going to help you. This is not going to help you in your life. You are going to lose your relationship. You are going to fail in your life. And would you like to find something else? And so you have to be really skillful how to say it, when to say it. And not only what to say it, but how to say it, when to say it. And but for that you have to develop your own skills first. And lastly, we also have to remember there's always a limit what we can do to others. So we have to have that understanding also.
Dear Bhante, any advice for people with depression, feeling sad or suicidal most of the time?
I think this is also a emotional pattern, how we react to emotion. That is why actually it's so important to learn to deal with our negative emotions, because if you do not develop these skills and so we start to interpret everything in a particular way, that can lead all the way to experience depression. So the mental, psychological disorders like depression is a result of mishandling our emotions for many years in our normal life. We may not have depression now, but we may have the potential of developing into depression if we do not handle our emotions in a skillful way. So when you already develop depression, you are too far. So now you have to again you have to have professional help first. So then I mean, of course, if you're having that kind of extreme situation, and of course we need to have professional help, go for therapy, and come to some kind of normal state, and then of course we can help that person not to have relapses of depression by helping that person to watch the mental states. This mindfulness is such a saving tool, being able to watch our own mind. This is so good, because the moment you can watch your own mind, you don't have to follow your thoughts. What happened in the depression is that whenever you have a thought of that of being being not enough, like low self-esteem, whatever, when you have a thought, automatic thoughts arising in you, you believe it. And we think that whatever arising in our mind is true. We think that our thoughts are true. Right? We tend to believe that our thoughts are true. But when you practice mindfulness, observe our own mind, when you develop that skill, you can observe your thoughts, not necessarily believing that they are true. That's the important moment. They can actually break the pattern of having more and more automatic thoughts and developing into more and more strong thoughts. So I think any person who having depression, after they have professional help, if they can develop this ability to watch their own mind and not to believe their thoughts, but to watch their thoughts, that is the beginning point of breaking their pattern of developing into depressive thoughts and moods. So develop this habit of watching our own thoughts and observing our own thoughts, not necessarily believing them, and simply watching them and understand it is a thought. It's not real. Whenever we are having thoughts, we forget that this is only a thought, not really happening now. So we can remind ourselves. So ability to watch our own thoughts is such a great skill, and we should teach that to our children, teach it to everyone, to observe our own thoughts and watch it, and then simply watch it and then not necessarily believe them, and we can decide to continue that thought or to abandon that thoughts. So we can help people to like stop more depressive thoughts from arising by simply watching the initial thoughts and simply watching them, not necessarily believe in them. But that's more like a preventive measure rather than cure, rather than remedy. When you're having them, you have to have professional help. But definitely mindfulness can help. Develop these skills before you develop depression.
Any questions from the floor before I read out other questions?
Yes.
One moment. Wait for the mic.
Hi, Bhante. May I ask you a question?
Yes.
I always thought that envy is a negative emotion. Envy.
Envy.
Yeah. It's like, why people have this, I don't have this. But I came across one video about this China woman. She said when she was very young, she envied people having big houses.
Big houses.
Yeah. So she says, I want to live in big houses. And that turns into a drive. And she became successful 30 or 40 years later. And she was one of the most successful one in Europe. So in this sense, envy has turned into a positive drive. So isn't that a good sign?
Can be envy can be a positive drive. Okay, I think I'm glad that that lady was successful, but we had to really ask, what do you mean by the success? Maybe she had a big house. The village has a big house, big career, but we had to ask what do you mean by success? Does she live happily? Maybe, yes. But a question we should ask: do we have to be envious for us to be successful? Is it necessary? Can we have that motivation from other source? Because the moment you make your jealousy or being envious to be a motivation for your own growth, you are comparing yourself with others. So your motivation comes from outside, and you are comparing yourself with others. You are competing with others, and sometimes maybe you have a house, and maybe someone else can have a better house, and again you are not settled, right? So I think you can have a motivation actually more internal, more like competing with ourselves, not really competing with someone else, not being envious of someone else, but having a goal within ourselves, and not necessarily always like watching others, but making a determination that I want to be better than this. So I think that will be more healthier way of healthier motivation. So of course, many people have developed their career, developed and progress materially in their life because of the competition. And one way all the companies and governments and many people get people to do things like making it a competition, and then everybody will do that. But I think it's not healthy at the end. So we can still progress, not necessarily comparing with others, but having like more like an inner goal, like pushing oneself to go to a further state. So I think we can have more healthier motivations to progress rather than habit of comparing with others, because then we will never be able to be happy and satisfied.
Bhante, is fear of ghosts a negative mental emotion?
Fear of
Ghosts.
negative.
Is it a negative mental emotion?
Whether the fear is direct fear coming from ghosts, people, cars, trees, is still the fear, right? So the fear is a little tricky emotion. Maybe if you have a concern, and we have more sense of protectiveness, that can save our life. But I think if you have a recurrent occurrence of fear, then it can be damaging and harmful. Because sometimes having some kind of survival need can help us. That is why we don't go near fire, right? So we protect ourselves. So it's helpful. But what really happens is that whenever we have a habit of fear, and we interpret everything as a fearful thing. So initially we were afraid of, as people, when we are evolving ourselves as a species, initially we were afraid of listening to a rattle of a bush. We had a fear because we interpret that as a sound of a tiger. That saved our life. But now we bring that same habit, so we don't have tigers anymore around us. But then we interpret, or people are talking to each other. Some person is having a discussion over there, and we interpret that, oh, that could be about me. So we can have that tendency and applying to all kind of unnecessary situation and having that fear. So that's not going to be helpful. So the fear of ghosts, right? So I really want to understand that why people are so afraid of ghosts. Because if you really understand, ghosts are the most vulnerable, most innocent, most like needy beings. So you have to have deep compassion for them. Why are you not afraid? You have to be afraid of people who are more powerful. Right? More powerful you have to be afraid of. So I think whenever you think about ghosts, think about, I mean, you can read all the stories about ghosts in the Buddhist texts, and always ghosts are the beings who have a lower realm. They are in the lower realm, and they are powerless. They are seeking help. So instead of being afraid of them, try to help them. So I think the best way to deal with ghosts is have compassion and try to always share the merits with them and dedicate whatever good deed you do to them. And we don't have to worry about be afraid of ghosts. I think we have to be more afraid of people around us. Not afraid of ghosts, because ghosts are so innocent. They need help. Please continue to help and be compassionate.
Bhante, is there a situation where some negative emotions are acceptable? For example, anger in the face of social injustice, standing up to bad bosses or governments, etc. Thank you.
Yeah. So we call it righteous anger, right? Yeah, I think, our definition is very clear in the beginning. Whatever mental state that create affliction, they create unrest, and they create are the negative emotions, and can be harmful to us and harmful to others. And other mental states are not necessarily negative. So we can have a kind of emotion. So emotion is necessarily energetic. Let's say we see someone is hurting a child. Okay, so we have an initial need and concern to help and serve. To prevent that damage from happening. So that is okay. But then we should be mindful not to push that concern, the urge, that energy coming from real compassion, go all the way to anger. That can have an inner burn in us. So that's why we have to be very mindful. So people can protest. Some people, we can have a voice and organize and express ourselves in favor of peace. But sometimes our protest for peace can be aggressive and violent, and you defeat the purpose. If you yourself cannot keep yourself peaceful, and how you can talk for peace, right? So I think we can have we don't want to call it anger. We can have a dislike and disapproval of certain actions done by people, and harmful action, violent action, exploitation. We can have disapproval, but then we can act out of that to prevent that, but we don't have to have an inner burn inside us that will cloud and impair our ability to judge, our ability to make good decisions. So if you let that emotion go all the way to the extreme, to the anger, and you will do things which are not helping your cause. And it will impair our ability to say the best thing to say and do the best thing to do. So I think we have to be, that's why again mindfulness can help us. Understand the concern and understand the urge coming from the compassion and care for others, but not to let that emotion go all the way to the negative emotions. So we don't have to call our concern for others as negative.
Any questions from the floor? Brother Chan?
Hi, Bhante. I think many times when we have negative emotions, it's more or less due to, I think it's quite often that we love ourselves too much, right? We think like, I don't like this, I hate this, and whatever. So, and we were told to practice loving kindness starting from ourselves. So we need to love ourselves. But, you know, when we love ourselves, we don't want to work so long. We want to eat the biggest cake. We want to have this. So it's difficult to satisfy everybody or make everyone happy. So how do we get the wisdom to balance the situation?
Yeah, it is true, sister, that many of our negative emotions coming from our self perspective. You know, we talk about that. You know, whenever we interpret everything in reference to us, ourselves, and then we generate more negative emotions. I think there we really need to distinguish what we mean by loving kindness and what we mean by self attachment. So when you say love ourselves, doesn't mean that we put ourselves first and put everyone else, you know, below us. That's not really loving ourselves. You know, so I think we have the problem of language here, because in language we use the term love to mean so many things. In Pali it's quite clear. When you practice what you call love, it's metta. Metta is like loving kindness. So when we, of course, in loving kindness meditation, we first have to, let's say, direct that loving kindness to ourselves. That doesn't mean that we actually try to, you know, bring ourselves as the first one in the world. Actually, at that time, what we do actually, we'll go out from ourselves and treat yourself as a one of the living beings. And this is the living being that is closest to us. And so first we can look at ourselves as an example of a living being and see what is really happening inside of us, and first make a good wish to this being. So we can use the word I in a conventional sense, or you can say that the person sitting here. I like to use that term. The person sitting here, be well, be safe, and be healthy, be fine. You know, like, so you treat yourself as one of the living beings. Actually, when you do practice loving kindness meditation, you kind of come out of yourself, and then you look at yourself as one of the living beings, and then make good wishes to that being. And then you can feel it inside you, and then you expand the same wish to others. So there's a big difference of really like practicing loving kindness to ourselves and then being selfish or like self-centered. So the very act of loving kindness dissolves the self-centeredness. So there I think we have to be careful the words that we use. So definitely the negative emotions come from more like self-centeredness. You interpret everything, you expect everything to be the way that you like. The more you have self-centeredness, the more negative emotions can arise. But practicing loving kindness to ourselves first does not mean self-centered. It's actually coming out of the self and looking at ourselves as another living being and wishing that person well-being first, but we don't stop there and we expand that to others. So there's a more clarifying the terminology there. Yeah.
Bhante, please explain how observing helps to manage negative emotion.
Didn't I explain enough? Okay. Whenever we observe emotion, we examine, we can observe and feel it mentally and physically what is really happening here. The moment your mind is doing that, your mind cannot feed that emotion. The problem is that whenever we have anger, sadness, fear, we are not only having it, we are feeding it. We are growing it. You know, having more fear, more sadness. So the moment you start to observe it, your mind is doing something that observing it. So then there's no food. When there's no food, the emotion, and they can actually calm down. But of course, simply observation will not remove that emotion right away. But you observe it. But the moment you observe it, you kind of not having pain of it. You can have sadness going. You can be observing it, And you still have that heaviness in the heart, but it's not as suffering as earlier. It is just like this. Let's imagine this situation. One day you go somewhere, you come out from your car and realize that it's going to rain. Everywhere is dark, it's going to rain. And then you suddenly realize that, actually, I'm having a sunglass on. The black glasses on. Okay, you realize that actually I'm seeing this, it's not really going to rain, but I'm seeing everything is dark and gloomy because I have sunglasses on. Okay, now you still look at environment, you still see everything the same way, still the gloom is dark, but you know it's not going to rain. But your experience will be the same, but your interpretation will be different. So just like that, when you are having anger and sadness, the moment you become aware that, the glass is on, the anger is present, anger has arisen, sadness has arisen, the very awareness can actually create a different experience. You're still going through that emotional energy, but you somehow relate to it differently. You will not be panic. Like, if you think that it's going to rain, you will be panic and try to go somewhere, but no, the glass is on. And you'll be more peacefully, you will make an informed decision. That's the kind of difference going to happen. So what we are really doing there is like, instead of looking through the glasses, you can look at the glasses. People are having glasses, and you can look through the glasses. You can look through me, right? But you can also look the glasses itself, right? Can you do that now? Can you look at your glasses? Not really look through it, but look at the glass. It's a completely different thing. So that's exactly what we do. When you do that, and you create a distance between yourself and the emotion, and it stops growing first, and then it allows us to make informed decision what to do with it. It gives you more space to respond to that. Yeah.
Last questions from the floor.
Sorry, Bhante. Maybe let me just zoom into my question a bit more.
Again? Yeah.
Let me just zoom into my question a bit more. Just now I asked you about
Self-love. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned about self-centered. So that's a bit extreme. So what I was actually trying to ask was the balance. So because we cannot please everyone. So let's say we were trying to be nice as well. But how nice do we need to be to know where the limits are? Because like, for example, if I said I do this part, for example, if we're doing a piece of work, we feel that doing this much is good enough, but that person don't think so. So where's the line to draw? There are many things which I think we are caught in this situation. So it's not, the reason why I mentioned about we love ourselves too much, because I think a lot of us, we tend to put our own interests in the first place. I think that's just being very natural. So we are always trying to balance this so that it can be happy for both ends. But how do we find the nice balance? Or that's where I'm coming from. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So, very effort of managing emotions is also coming out of self-love, because we want to make our mind healthy, and that is why we want to manage our emotions. So I think, loving kindness towards oneself really means taking care of yourself, and then, and managing emotions and not harming yourself first. And that we need to do. No one else is going to do it, and we have to do it. And then the problem is that, okay, we also should help others. And how much we should sacrifice ourselves to help others. That's the point, right? How much we should sacrifice to help others. I think that we don't want to sacrifice anything from us to help others. Because the real meaning of helping others is also helping ourselves. So we should help others, not only to help others, but we have to put our own spiritual practice as a priority. Our peace of mind, our health of our mind should be the priority. But when you make that priority, our own spiritual health, our own peace as a priority, we are not going to harm anyone else automatically. Because you are helping someone not only to help that person, because as a part of your practice, as a part of growing your compassion. So there is a point actually when you continue practice that we transcend the dichotomy of helping oneself and helping others. Because helping ourselves means actually helping others, and helping others means also helping ourselves. So we kind of transcend that dichotomy at one level. But what we can really do is that if you really put our spiritual growth as the priority, then I think we can solve so many problems. Our spiritual growth is a priority. Okay, then if helping others can help that spiritual growth, we help. And then dealing with someone's issues is simply enhancing our negative emotion rather than helping growing our spiritual growth. Why you want to do it, right? And maybe you can find a different way to do it if you really want to help, and we can find different ways. So I think the spiritual, when you put our spiritual growth at the forefront, it can help as a guideline to what to do. So we don't have to, like even when we help someone, of course we do it out of compassion, as it will help our compassion to grow, and it will also help other person too. And if it doesn't help your compassion to grow, maybe we can reevaluate our own motivation, why we want to do it. And if we clarify our own motivation and we go back and maybe do the same help, and that can have a different result. So it's not wrong to have spiritual growth as the forefront, because that's not really selfish. Because once you have own spiritual growth as the priority, it automatically going to help so many other people too. But you are not judging your help, focusing on how many people you pleased. We are judging your action by focusing on how much purity it brings to my mind. So if we have that orientation, we keep helping. So maybe we can be successful, maybe we may not be successful. That's not the point. We are purifying our mind. In that process, we definitely will help many others too.
Thank you, Bhante. Before we close for tonight, and before we do the transfer of merits, just one announcement. Next Monday, 15 July, we have another Dhamma Talk by Sister Sylvia Bay. The topic is, what makes a Sappurisa? Sappurisa means good and worthy person. So I hope to see all of you again next week. So please put your palms together. We do transfer of merits, lead by Bhante.
Okay, so let us conclude this session by sharing the merits. And today we all came to here and then spend this moment very mindfully. And throughout this whole period, we were listening to the teachings of the Buddha, try to understand the human mind and try to understand the way to handle our negative emotions. By learning the Dhamma and paying attention to Dhamma, we have generated so much merits today. So now we can share these merits with all others. And first of all, we can share these merits with our beloved teacher, our great master, late Venerable Dr. Jnana Rama Mahathera. And I also personally would like to share the merits, whatever I generated by sharing the Dhamma with you. And I personally like to share these merits also with our beloved teacher. And first of all, let us share these merits with him. And I will help you to do this chant, because he's our teacher. So let us now share these merits with him and also all other teachers who guided us in our life, who helped us to learn and to change our life. May all of our teachers, and including our late principal, most venerable, Dr. Jnana Rama Bhante, share these merits. May they rejoice in these merits. May they benefit from these merits. May they have a smooth, speedy journey towards the enlightenment. With these thoughts, please repeat after me. Idang me garuno hotu sukita hontu no garu. Idang me garuno hotu sukita hontu no garu. idang me garuno hotu sukita hontu no garu. Let us also share this merits with all our departed relatives, our grandparents, parents, and other friends and relatives who have helped us so much, who guided us so much, who are no more with us today. Let us be grateful and share these good merits with them. May they rejoice in these merits. May they also have opportunity to learn the Dhamma and improve their spiritual practice and speed journey towards the enlightenment. May all of our departed relatives share these merits. May they be well, happy and peaceful wherever they may be. Idang me Jnatinang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo idang mi jnatinang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo idang mi jnatinang hotu sukhita hontu jnatayo. Let us also share and dedicate these merits with all other people, all other beings. Particularly, let us share these merits with people who may not have an opportunity, who may not have an access to the teachings of the Buddha. May all these people share these merits, and may they too have an opportunity to listen to the Dhamma and improve their compassion and wisdom in their lives. May all other beings in all other realms and all living beings in all the 6 realms share these merits. May they rejoice in these merits. May all beings be well, happy and peaceful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And again, I'm also very glad to be here today and share the Dhamma with you all. And thank you very much for your active participation. And I have been coming to Singapore every year, since I left Singapore in 2005, I think. And but I was not giving Dhamma talks, earlier, but then today I'm so glad that I was able to come to Mangala Vihara and also pay my tribute to Bhante Jnana Ram and meet all of you. And I'm so glad that all of you take part in the Dhamma Talk, and I really wish that may you continue your spiritual journey, spiritual practice, and may you have more opportunities to meet more teachers and more opportunity to practice the Dhamma, and wish you all the best in your spiritual practice.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May all rise, put your palms together, we send Bhante off.